Among the heterogeneous and multi-genreous manifestation of human activity, graffiti stands out with its peculiarity of rapid response. It acts as a monolithic reality, including text, image, information, and propaganda, while at the same time not identifying with any of the above individually, but emerging in its final state as a phenomenon with a solid internal content and emphasized concept. In 2020, the Armenian society was subjected to a double shock and trauma as a long-term consequence. At the beginning of the year, COVID-19 revised the state of social interactions and relations across the world. People found themselves in forced isolation and had to change their lives habits, adapting to the situation. The existing means and principles of direct communication, social distance, underwent radical changes, giving way to online communication and work. Entertainment events came to a minimum. Public life in all its manifestations was transferred to the online platform. The world declared a war on the pandemic with the determination to break the chain of transmission of the disease. However, Armenia faced more serious challenges. On September 27, 2020, Azerbaijan launched a military aggression against Nagorno-Karabakh. As a consequence, our society was forced to fight on two fronts. In one case, it was an invisible war and with deadly virus, and in another case, it was a fight against the visible enemy. Thus, the Armenian society faced loss of safety and sense of security in its confrontation with both the visible and invisible enemies. This cumulative effect exacerbated trauma. Cognitive and routine boundaries did not work, having also an impact on the identity. The identity starts to be shaken. To this and the author of the "We Will Win" poster, Ruben Malayan, notes, "I think that in that transformation, in that metamorphosis, we will win became we are winning, and the emphasis was on us. This was the second cycle when I made it. We will win and we're winning." This is the metamorphosis of these two. Shows the "We will win" and "We are winning" posters. It transformed from this one to that one. Now we're all going through different stages. Our mental stage is changing, and it is crucially important for us to find ability and capacity to properly respond to it. The first one, it was very important for me to write this. On the one hand, the idea that we would be cleansed was a good one. The message was addressed to the enemy, we will cleanse you, but then an addition was made, and we will be cleansed was added. This is very important, probably the most important thing for me, because as a nation we are now obliged to go through this catharsis process. And if we're able to do that, we will win that war. If we're not able to self-cleanse, we will perish. I have no doubt about that. This is from interview on November 9, 2020. Naturally, in any crisis, various overcoming tools come to the foreground or forefront. Mass protests, flash mobs, new emphasis in official propaganda, and new means of it, individual initiatives. And graffiti as a form of unique protest, propaganda, and mass initiative could be left out of all, could not be left out of all these developments. It is in Mumbai, the other one was in Sensen. When graffiti is used as part of propaganda in fight against COVID. So there are humorous slogans along with the graffitis, which describe life during COVID. Then we have also some graffitis about the fight against COVID. So uh, the doctors are shown as goddesses, as superheroes, and as angels. This symbolic transformation of the depiction was not accidental in soul, as the pandemic is an enemy disease which is invisible and hence perceived as supernatural, and it can be fought by heroes with the same supernatural qualities, divine beings, superheroes, and so on. From a practical point of view, graffitis played a major role in raising awareness about the importance of wearing masks and getting vaccinated. In a sense, the graffiti of the epic struggle against the viral enemy was, willingly or unwillingly, aimed at restoring or instilling in people a sense of security and safety, a sense of being protected. In fact, the emergence of the "We Will Win" poster hashtag as a graffiti, which spread in many towns and villages of Armenia, was also aimed at overcoming the security crisis and increasing the citizens' sense of or feeling of being protected. And the author speaks about it. Also, by transferring it to Shushi, initially when the idea emerged that time had come to do it on a large scale on the wall, at first we thought of doing it in Yerevan. Then we realized that it is not the time for Yerevan. We should go to the very place where that slogan is more important, although it is not as important here. We are the rear, where and we are the arrear guard, and Shushi is in the front line. We said we would go and do it there. Shushi was bombed before our arrival. It was also bombed after we left. But that wall has remained. From the perspective, graffiti is already a form of communication, through which people can conduct a visual dialogue without the need to meet, when the identity of the interlocutor does not matter in terms of a dialogue and the information. It reflects psychological, social, political issues, those of everyday life, etc. The wall, the writing, and the image can have a cumulative effect and can be a way of overcoming trauma. From this point of view, it is also interesting how space and military attributes change physically. Graffiti is a game you play with space. It transforms space objects and things, turning a collapsed wall into a car or something else. It is not accidental that street artists do illustrations in a dramatic place, sometimes by imitation, sometimes on their own initiatives. In this context, special attention is paid to the border walls and ruins, which are potential sites of cultural trauma. One such site is the Palestinian-Israeli border wall, which has attracted the attention of various prominent artists who have left their peace-promoting humanitarian writings and images there, transforming the primary substance of the border wall, space, and taking it out of a specific physical space, subjecting it to deterritorialization. An example of such transformation in the Armenian environment is sculptor Wartime's stitching of the wall of a building damaged by an earthquake in 1998 with an iron wire. The damaged cracked wall isn't anthropomorphized here. The external attributes of a person who underwent a surgery are attributed to the wall. On the other hand, any transfiguration can lead to the decoding of the place. The Palestinian-Israeli border wall is a traumatic site for Palestinians. When Banksy paints on the wall, one of the Palestinians following the artist's work notes that he is beautifying the wall. Banksy thanks him for the remark. However, the Palestinian replies that he hates the wall and does not want it to be beautiful, and the artist better go home. This interesting episode shows that the wall is a symbol of war, primarily a symbol of war and conflict in terms of its primary content, but that content is transformed to graffiti and is decoded. It is here that an internal conflict arises between the symbol of war and the work of art, the beautiful. On the other hand, in the process of creating graffiti, in the process of decoding, this conflict becomes a transformation. This conflict transforms from a symbol of war or death to a symbol of art or life. By stitching the wall damaged by the earthquake, we turn it into a work of art. The sculptor decodes the consequence of a natural disaster, transforming it into a symbol of rebirth, a symbol of life. In the same way, the graffiti on the warheads aftermath of the Azerbaijani shelling changes the primary purpose and content of the bomb identified with the war and militarization and aggression. The warheads, which were illustrated with blobs, hashtag recognize Artsakh became symbols of the demilitarization and the exclusion of war. Let's watch a small video now. People of Artsakh are creative people. They can create art objects from the remnants of the missiles, Azeri missiles. Arek Bolayan, a war journalist and reporter, is one of those who has created this artwork, and we will have an interview with him about creating art objects in the midst of the war.
Будешь рисовать очередное животное? Какое? И как ты выбор делаешь?
Ну, на месте получается. Я сам заранее.
How do you choose your art objects? It happens accidentally. I see something and I try to turn that into art object.
Ну, это первое, которое ты внутри делаешь, да?
Да. А вообще, первую, которую делали, мы пока не знали, что это вообще, оно опасно, не опасно.
We don't know whether it's dangerous or not. I'm not sure that it is actually safe. I'm not either. I hope it is safe. I will start from the inner part.
В общем, не орги, да. Да. Угу. А.
Arek Balayan is creating the face of Artsakh, is transforming boring places and the industrial style into something joyful and, most important, recognizable, illustrating traces of the war in bright colors. Arek brings it closer to the border of art. Now, this is how he decorated with bugs the walls of or blobs. In Martin School, he says, my blobs are the units which are inside of us. It is imperishable, you know always where they are. You can go back to them and have a catharsis and continue on. When you are detached from them, you are rotten. Irrevocably rotten. So when he colors these places, he does it not for us, but rather for the enemy. So those territories that I thought we were not going to have anymore, there was an inner desire to paint them and leave them there because they establish relations with the viewer. What do we leave behind us? Burned houses, burned and demolished houses. I wanted that little light to remain in that painful reality, to see how the enemies will treat those remnants. I wanted that little light to remain in that painful reality, which I think that there will be some people who will enter into a human relationship with them and it will bring them something good. A little color and a light that I don't know may save someone's life at some moment. Thus, the artist tries to transform ruins to give them color, to enter into a dialogue mediated by his writings and illustrations. And generally speaking, graffiti is a unique call for peace. We also see similar calls to peace during the Russian-Ukrainian war. Although the whole of Europe is swept by anti-Russian sentiments and obviously supports Ukraine, the graffiti on the Russia-Ukraine war call for peace. Even if they contain attributes related to supporting Ukraine, their symbolism is still peace-promoting. A young girl carries the flag of Ukraine and crushes the tanks. We see also here the Stop War, the main slogan of those graffitis, or we see a girl's hair decorated with flowers with hippie peace symbol. In fact, the baseline content of the illustration on Nagorno-Karabakh made by a student designer at the Race Institute of Art near the Papillon in Hollywood and Balance illustrations in Martin represent the Nagorno-Karabakh war, but in both cases we're dealing with the manifestations of demilitarization and anti-war propaganda. Mitigation and overcoming of the consequences to the transformation of the physical space via illustrations and writings, an abstract space is created, which gives the opportunity for dialogue, sharing traumatic experience and feelings, and everyone can find their own environment where they are not alone, as well as the feeling of human safety and security, the feeling of being protected. Thank you.